Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Monday, the 10th of July. I have to tell you, first of all, that this meeting will be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. As it's the first meeting of this cycle, and even though I know that we've probably all met in different meetings already, I think it'd probably be useful to do a round of introductions. My name is Catherine Pope. I'm Councillor for Carlton Ward and I'm the chair of the meeting. And if we just move along the front row.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Councillor Paul Hughes, Cavendish Ward, substituting for Councillor Duncan, also Cavendish Ward.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Rachel Ellis, Councillor for Bestwood St Albans Ward.
And Councillor David Brocklebank, Councillor for Plains Ward.
I'm Councillor Russell Whiting for Colic and I'm Vice Chair of the committee.
Councillor Roy Allen.
Councillor Sam Smith of the Trent Valley Ward.
Councillor Martin Smith, Newstead Abbey Ward.
Councillor Lorraine Brown, Calverton Ward.
Councillor Graham Pope, Plains Ward.
Councillor Michelle Welsh, Porchester.
I'm Emma McGinley and I'm the Democratic Services Manager with a very croaky voice today.
And Ben Hope for Democratic Services Officer.
And I'm Mike Hill, Chief Executive.
So thank you everyone for that. Emma, I think we've got two apologies.
Yep, so we've received apologies from Councillor Sandra Barnes and Councillor Andrew Duncan. As Councillor Hughes said at the start, he's sub-in for him. Thank you.
Okay, so the first duty is to approve the minutes of the last meeting on the 23rd of March. I'm hoping that some of you were at the meeting and can confirm them as a true record.
Yes, I'll second that. I think Rachel and I were the only ones present.
Thank you. And there's nothing arising from those? No. And does anyone have any interest to declare in the agenda? And just to remind you, if you find that you do, to let us know and step out at that point. So we're now on to item 4 of the agenda, which is the risk management scorecard, and Chief Executive Mike is going to talk us through this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just move down so I get the microphone. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Scrutiny Committee. Bit of background, really. So I just wanted to go through a bit of the detail, which I wouldn't normally do because we're all new members. So I did a similar approach with the Audit Committee. I explained in depth what each risk stood for and where we got to and where the current position is. So if you indulge me, I'll do a précis of that approach, but hopefully tell you enough to get an understanding around the room of where we are with corporate risk. So the current risk management strategy and framework was last considered and approved by Cabinet in October 2017. And by the nature, it's coming up to 6 years old now. It is due for renewal this year. It was due for renewal last year, but we've currently got a vacancy for a head of finance whose role it was to deliver that. So that is on the work programme for this year. And the purpose of the strategy and framework is to define how risks are to be managed in the council. It provides guidance on the processes, procedures, roles and responsibilities for risk, and that's not just officers, it's members as well. Members of the Audit Committee and this committee have a role and function to address risk, and it sets out the context on how those risks are to be managed. As part of the risk management strategy and framework, there's a requirement to hold a corporate risk register, and indeed that goes down hierarchical, so it goes from the corporate risk register down through the departmental risk register and service risk register, and indeed if we have huge capital projects or whatever, we also have a projects risk register as well. So the way it works, if something's significant that's picked up either at a project risk or in a departmental risk, it gets escalated through the process and eventually comes to the corporate one, which is then reported through the Audit Committee and this committee. Risks are reported on a clear RAG rating scale, red, amber, green, and all risks we determine as a council can fit into one of 13 overarching categories, which you can see in this report. And those risks are reported each quarter, as I say, through to this committee and the audit committee. The way this report is set out, I'll go through each one of the 13 risks. I'll explain what the actions were that we completed during the last quarter and what we currently think is outstanding and yet to do. Risk is interesting because you're not always going to mitigate risks. All you can do for most part is take it as far as you can. So, there might be some risks that will always remain in a serious level because, take something like cyber fraud or whatever, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So there's always the risk that something may come tomorrow. So, we're not always going to get green as part of a risk rating. So it's just that awareness there that, risks can be dealt with differently and they all, are looked at and monitored separately. So if I go through each one of the 13, so the first one is about budget monitoring, really. So budget monitoring goes to Cabinet and again through to this committee on a quarterly basis. Each quarter depends what the finance manager sets out in the report, and it's based on the actual spend and income throughout the year. So normally we take a cautious approach, quarter one and quarter two, while the year is settling down. So you'll probably see in quarter one we'll have probably an amber, where we do a preliminary forecast for the year end of what the position is likely to be. But we'll take a pessimistic view on that and, it will be an amber. Quarter 2 and 3, as the year evolves, it gets more into the reality of where trends are going. And then quarter 4 more or less reflects the current thinking. So as you've got in front of us, quarter 3, the report went to Cabinet in February for quarter 3, and that set out an assumed underspend at year end. So therefore this risk was reduced in quarter 4 because of that basis that we thought it would be an underspend. So there is no risk of the budget overheating at that point. And indeed we had the outturn report last week to Cabinet and it's coming to Council this week, and you'll clearly see from operations there was an underspend of 213,000. So this risk at quarter 4 was dropped to a green, which is the lowest rating we can. But as I say, don't be surprised if you see that go back up again in quarter 1 as we start a new year. So actions completed in the year, in the quarter 4 was the close down process was reviewed, work started, and I just said we've now completed that process. So risk 2 is the big one, if you like. It's about money, it's about long-term sustainability and financial viability going forward. It's all about the medium-term financial plan, which again was set out in the Cabinet report in February and the Council report on the 2nd of March this year. It's been no secret that, we have struggled for financial money in terms of government grants. There's been a lot of reports about core spending power where we've been in the bottom 5 for the country in terms of support, and that's not just from government support, it's from what we can generate through business rates and what we can generate from council tax as well. There's also reported in that medium-term financial plan an unmet delivery target yet of £2.8 million there, which is efficiencies that we need to make over the next 5 years, not straight away, but in the next 5 years. And we haven't got any firm plans as reported in that report in March of how to address that. And that work is ongoing now with the Cabinet and other members. There was some good news that's appeared. Again, it's in the report. So the Her Majesty's Customs and Excise, HMRC, have now determined that leisure centre income is classed as non-business. So what this means is for various activities in the leisure centre, we've always charged a 20% VAT and passed that over as part of the VAT claim. Because of that ruling now, that is now due back to the council. So going forward, we will be able to keep that extra 20% of VAT. Officers many years ago had the foresight that this was coming, so probably 10, 12, 15 years ago, we put a claim in against that. So now this decision has been made, then we should get a refund of the last 6, 7, 8 years worth of VAT as well. So we don't know the value of that. We know the claim we put in, but it's going to be assessed and adjusted by HMRC, and we hope that money will be coming into the council's bank account very soon. And that will be a welcome relief, and that will certainly help to boost the balances. So what did we complete in Q4? Well, the budget monitoring report, as I say, the quarterly budget monitoring report went to Cabinet. We have a new medium-term financial plan presented and approved by Council. What is outstanding at the moment, again with the head of finance post being vacant, we are expecting a new procurement and contract management strategy. There is a new procurement bill going through at the moment, so it will need to pick up that as well. So if that is delivered from a central government perspective, by the time we come to review this strategy, and all that will be built into it as well. We also want to look at a strategy of how to maximise current income streams. So that work is ongoing as well. And we need to complete a piece of work around the audit on main financial systems.
Can I just stop you, because I think there's some questions. So, Councillor Pope?
Yeah, just on the actions, Mike, it's purely for my understanding, none of them have got a timeline of when the action is expected to be reached. Is that normal for...
So I'll turn the microphone off now. In the detail behind it, which isn't presented here today, we do have a timeline. So it could be something I could adopt moving forward.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yes.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mike. I was going to save this till the end because I've got a few. But on risk 2 and about the good news with HMRC, what will that money be spent on? Is it ring-fence money, or does the customer that we've obviously charged the VAT on get a refund? So does the council get the money, or does the businesses we've charged be refunded for that? And if it is council money, what are we going to spend it on?
It's people like you and me who's had badminton lessons or whatever at the leisure centres. So there's no business involved. It's taxpayers effectively. So that money gets returned to the taxpayers into balances, and then obviously it's a council decision how we spend that money going forward. Or indeed, propped up the balances. As I said, it's always nice to have a bit of backup in the reserves.
Councillor Smith?
Although, just to counter that, Mike, correspondence I've seen from NALC suggesting that money actually goes back to the customer. And whilst HMRC are not planning to pursue where it goes to, I think we need to be very, very careful about and make sure we've got sound legal grounds for keeping it up for ourselves rather than going back to customers, because ultimately it was customers who paid. And I'm sure HMRC will say, to certainly those who are on the DNA scheme, you should be able to trace. So I'm not sure, what you've been told about that, or whether you can actually keep the money yourself or not.
It's something we're still looking at, Chair, in terms of that. If we can trace customers, then it's an option we can take. I mean, if you take things like swimming lessons, there is no VAT charged on swimming lessons, so there is no issues for that. Identifying the general customer will be impossible. If you went swimming 6 years ago on a Monday, then there's no way of tracing that. But if it is DNA customers, then that is something we need to look at. And at this point, if I'm honest, I don't know whether DNA customers are charged VAT or not. So it's something we are aware of.
Probably what I should have said before we started was if we go through each one, so if people have got questions about each risk specific, and then if there's any general questions, ask them at the end.
We'll do that, okay. So there's no more on risk 1 or 2. So risk 3 is about health and safety of our staff. So what we need to do and what we are doing is look at the programme of inspections for, certainly health and safety aspects and work relationships and what we're doing, in terms of safety of our staff and, of course, customers as well. And we're undertaking a corporate review of risk assessments. So we're not saying risk assessments aren't there. We're saying the risk assessments need a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year refresh, and that's the process we're currently going through. As an example, if you're working at height up a ladder, we may have done one 3 years ago and it's unlikely it will change because it will still say you should secure the ladder, but it's something we need to refresh, relook at and then sign off on a periodic basis. So that's some of the work that's been completed in Q4. It needs to continue, and that is the work we're following through now into the current new year. And also, again, you've probably noticed plastic boxes on the walls in some places, so we are looking and rolling out new emergency evacuation procedures for the Civic Centre. It was quite easy in the old days because everybody worked 5 days a week in the office. Clearly, the modern ways of working with Agile, it's difficult to know who are in and not in the building, including members. So that is why we're looking at those procedures.
Councillor Welsh.
Hi, it's a question in relation to health and safety issues, and it relates to what our staff members wear that are doing jobs in order to protect themselves, such as boots and uniforms. So I'm thinking of refuge collectors and grave diggers, for example. It was brought to my attention recently that some of the stuff isn't appropriate for what they're doing, and there's been some cost cutting around that. And I was wondering whether that is something that is being looked into, including how they keep themselves dry and how they keep themselves warm, and the facilities at some of these places, particularly as well when there is a woman in what is currently a male-orientated workplace, that provisions for a female worker weren't always in place. So I was just wondering and hoping that that would be looked at and reviewed and in some way reported back to us to alleviate any concerns.
Yeah, I can certainly bring that back. I mean, there's no excuse not to have PPE. There is no directive that says we must save budgets on PPE. If it's been identified as a need, then absolutely the council should be providing them. So I'll follow that through. In terms of facilities, cemeteries are always an interesting area, and it's an area that, again, is being reviewed as part of the risk assessments. But, I will absolutely support anything that the employee or members of staff need in regards to health and safety. They should have, within reason, but it's about safety, not money. But it depends how many thousands of pounds the money is, just to caveat that. But in most cases, absolutely.
Any more questions? No? Carry on.
Okay. So risk 4 is about staffing. It's about recruitment, retention and internal capacity. Over the years with the budget reductions, the number of staff have significantly dropped. I can't tell you how many, but I think it's approaching 100 now over the last probably 6 or 7 years. So, absolutely that has affected internal capacity, and people are working extremely hard to continue to deliver, the great services that Gedling currently offer. So in terms of this, we deliver quarterly performance monitoring reports, and the one delivered in Q3 considered a full review of the equality framework and action plan, and that was with regard to staffing as well. It features quite prominently in the new 4-year Gedling plan, 2023 to 2027, which we set at a deliberately high level, more strategic level, which will help us fit various projects and initiatives under that. Service plans sit below that, and they've all been developed as well, and we're now using Pentana, which is our council's performance management system, and we're using that more smarter really to identify risks, and we're putting on there all risks associated with this report, audit recommendations, carbon management actions, equality actions and others, to make sure we're picking those up. And if it is highlighted where staff are struggling to deliver due to capacity issues, that is raised as a risk, and as I say, it comes through here at the moment, which is why this is still showing as an amber, which is significant likelihood and serious impact. In terms of actions outstanding, so you'll be aware that, or you may not be aware, actually last year we looked at staff in pay, Band 2 was our lowest grade. It was quite close to the minimum wage, so we increased that to spinal column point 5, which is on Band 3. So that's given us some gap now above the national living wage, but as inflation is extremely high still, then we need to keep monitoring that moving forwards. We're also looking and working with the universities around apprenticeships to see exactly where we can, and the universities do offer various options. So they do offer students where they want to come in for 6, 8, 10 weeks, and the universities pay for that option where they come in. They also then go to the other extreme where they'll offer a full year's work experience for the council, but in those regards we would have to pay, quite rightly, the student to work as a council. So we're looking at a whole suite and range of all those options around apprenticeships. We're aware that the website is a bit staid, if we're honest, so we've looked at some other councils and some of them are quite flashy and encouraging. What we want to do is make sure we do attract the best. So we're looking at the offer that's on the website and try and make it more attractive. We live in Gedling, it's a beautiful place. Nottingshire's a fantastic area as well. So, we have got the benefits. We've got superb universities. So I don't think we make the most of that. So we're looking at really working on the website to try and encourage that side. And again, agile working is a key offer now for recruitment. People want it. Some people like it, some people don't. But I think it's now a case of we have to offer it to attract the right people. And that's sort of where we are reviewing it going forward.
Thank you. I think we've got a review of the agile working on our work plan, because I think it'd be really interesting to review it in terms of productivity, impact on staff morale and that sort of thing as well. I had a question, and I know Councillor Smith has as well. I appreciate this isn't more a look back in terms of the risk register, but I was thinking about the potential from the current pay claim, and that if that will be agreed at a national level but comes without any additional funding, if it is agreed at a level that you've not budgeted for, and also I suppose the potential of strike action, and is that within the risk as well?
Yes, Chair, it is in there as a risk. So at the moment, the budget has 5% we built in as a figure for pay awards. Last year, the average was about 7, so it did cost us another £500,000. So ourselves, like many councils across the country, have probably set at 5, because we don't do this in isolation. We do this in consultation with others to get the most likely view. 5 will go a long way towards it, but at the moment, the offer is exactly the same as last year, so it's going to be at least 6, I would say, which will cost us, and that's if they accept the current offer. If they are willing to go on strike, the various unions, and ask for more, then that is a potential risk issue as well. So that's sort of built into risk 2, the medium-term financial plan, and in here as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Risk 4 doesn't refer to SLT recruitment or retainment, Mike, and I know that you're stretched as well. And you recently, in the last council, we lost 2 directors for environment. So what are the plans about replacing them or reorganising your and your deputies' roles to absorb that work if we're not going to replace them, and what's the time frame behind that?
It's something it's something I'm looking at the moment, so I'm trying to make a decision which way forward we go. Obviously, I couldn't recruit depending on the election. Your party may have had totally different views to the current one, which meant I had to go in a different direction with the director. So now the election's over and we can move forward. I'm now looking to see where I go on that post. Because of the financial situation as well, it's been quite helpful in keeping those balances, but certainly not helpful on my time and everything else. So yes, it's a decision I'll be making shortly.
Councillor Ellis?
Yes, thank you. Just a request for clarification, really. You mentioned the equality review. It's not in actions outstanding. Can we presume that that's been completed?
Chair. We've got about I would say something like 98 actions in the equality plan. Most of them are progressing quite well, but they're not all finished yet. So they are dealt with separately, and it needs bringing all together. So they are referred to, but there are some still outstanding, yes, absolutely. So risk 5 is about IT and latest technology. So I've already mentioned things around cyber risk, and we don't know what's around the corner. So what have we done? Well, we commissioned an external review of the ICT service because ICT is a niche area. I'm not an expert in it. We have a fantastic ICT team in the council, but I'm sure, absolutely sure, they're fantastic and good and up to date, but I wanted that reassurance that they are. So the external review of the ICT service has been delivered. It's now completing, and they have confirmed they are a superb unit, which I had no doubt about. But moving forward, again, as in the actions outstanding, it's the next stage. So it's what's next. It's the digital strategy for the council. It's the plan. We have a number of systems. There's a bit of consolidation, I believe, that needs doing. So we need to go out there. What is the digital strategy? What's the best one to facilitate more efficient working across the council? So that's where we are with that, and we're preparing a specification to go out for that work with that. The other side, I already mentioned cybersecurity. We had an internal audit which gave a number of recommendations, and we're working to implement those. And also, we're looking at a disaster recovery plan. So we do work very, very well in terms of emergency planning and addressing issues, but there's no harm in, reviewing this disaster recovery plan, making sure it's fully up to date, and that's some of the work we've been working on. And finally, what's outstanding is, as I say, the digital strategy, implementation of those recommendations, and then a review and update of the information security policy so that everybody is aware of where we are.
Okay. Any questions? No.
Okay, so number 6 is about physical assets. This is about buildings. So as you'd expect, a lot of them are getting older and older. We all struggle to find the money to keep them, at the top quality that they were when they were built. So we've been undertaking a number of condition surveys of the council buildings and making sure we're looking at suitability and sufficiency, including energy requirements of those buildings, and that work is nearing completion. There's just 1 or 2 left now. We've also looked at a new compliance regime. So things around keeping registers for Legionella, the water testing, fire, asbestos. Again, we've always had those in place, but we're looking at see if we can work smarter and keep those records more digitally to make sure we're up to date and safe on those. So actions outstanding, complete those asset condition and suitability surveys. We need to design and write a new asset management plan. So this will look at each building individually and say, are we keeping it? If so, should we be investing in it, or should we keep it at the same level? Or if it doesn't meet current requirements, should we dispose of it and reinvest in the buildings we want to do? So it's that entire strategy that needs working through as part of the asset management plan. As part of that, we have a number of temporary accommodation properties, high churn in temporary accommodation properties. They're not always left in perfect conditions, depending who gets placed in them. So we need to keep on top as a regular review of the offer in terms of our TA accommodation. So we do that, but we need to make sure we keep all those registers and everything else as part of that process.
Can't see any questions on that one either.
So risk 7 is about changes in legislation. There's 3 really we keep a watchful eye on. The first one is the Brazil case, which is about leave for part-time workers. That's still unresolved. If it was to affect us, it would affect some of our mainly leisure centre staff who work part-time, but we're keeping a watching brief on that. The second one is the McLeod pension case, which mainly affected, I think it arose out of the fire authorities. So we are keeping it, again, a watchful eye, see if it has any implications for this council, but we don't think so at this stage. And the third one, which is a huge concern for me with my finance hat on, is the Resources and Waste Strategy and the Environmental Act. So at the moment it requires us potentially to collect food waste in about 3 years' time. We've got no money to buy 6 new vehicles, £1 million at least, plus new staff, etc., etc. So that is a watching brief on seeing what happens to that. Because I think it won't be just Gedling that struggles to provide that, it'll probably be every council. In terms of information asset registers, again, this is looking at what information we hold there, and it links into the GDPR side as well. So we're doing a full review of those. Almost complete. In fact, it is complete, I believe, now in Q1. Okay, risk 8 is about procurement, contractual breaches. Again, we've had an internal audit of both contract management and procurement in last year, and they contained a number of minor recommendations, and some of those are implemented last quarter and some are still ongoing. We're also looking at indemnity clauses now. So traditionally, as part of Legal's review, we used to have a standard indemnity clause. Well, the market's changed now. Not all risks are standard anymore, so we have to react, and that's why we need to look at indemnity clauses. If the risk is passed too much onto the supplier, then nobody will tender in this current environment. So we need to look at those and see what we're comfortable in terms of our risk appetite, and then set those accordingly. Risk 9, one-off challenges to council decisions or compensation trend. So, a lot of councils are suffering from compensation claims in terms of potholes, for example, damage to vehicles, and a lot of councils are dealing with them. Thankfully, it's not Gedling, it's the county council that deals with those claims, so they have their own matters and procedures for dealing with those. For a district council, it's probably restricted in the main to potential planning decisions, whether they go rightly or wrongly, or whether they're challenged, and that's an area that is dealt with on an individual basis. So, as we don't have any of those, fortunately, at the moment, the risk is quite low and it's green. Going back to the Brazil case, that's also a risk in there about compensation, whether we have to pay the leave to self-employed instructors and other part-time staff. So that's in there, and we've been reviewing certainly the agency workers and the part-time instructors in leisure to make sure where necessary we've got them onto full employment status and they are Gedling Council employees. The Environment and Licensing Committee received a report in January around taxi licensing. It was found that we were overcharging through a system which the calculations weren't quite right, so we've now set that in place, and there is a scheme of refunds currently in operation, and they're progressing over the next, they've been progressing since March. And the actions outstanding, again, just keep monitoring the employment status of individuals working for the council. So risk 10, nearly there. This is about service standards, customer satisfaction. So what we do, we monitor complaints on a quarterly basis, and they are reported as part of the quarterly performance monitoring report. In terms of actions outstanding, we're continually looking at the potential staffing capacity issues, whether that would be an issue around customer expectations and customer satisfaction. So we're looking at that. And there has recently been a customer services strategy written, which should be coming to Cabinet very, very soon. Emma's nodding. So that will set out our strategy for dealing with customers moving forward. Okay, risk 11. This is about reputation. The only real reputation risk at the moment is the long-term ambitions to be net zero by 2030. We do have a really in-depth carbon management strategy strategy, and we also have an action plan linked to that. Again, there's probably approaching 100 actions within that to be delivered between now and 2030, which isn't that long. So we are aware of what's been promised and we're working towards that. And in that regard, the second bullet point there, a new corporate environment group, which has all senior managers, heads of service on that meeting, and we're trying to progress where we can on that. A big caveat, again, is same for all councils. These initiatives cost a lot of money. So, but we are trying our best. Okay, 12 is failure to react to an environmental incident or malicious act. This really is emergency planning. So it's how we react when an emergency comes about. Recent history has shown we do react really, really well and really, really quickly when something happens, and everything is in place to do that. It's currently in amber. As I say, we don't know what's coming around the corner, but we believe all mitigations are there at the moment. One weakness was business continuity plans. We've addressed that by holding a workshop in May, and they are now in process of being, well, they've all been written. They're now being assessed by the Health and Safety and Emergency Planning Officer, and we'll get those embedded into the system. We're also maintaining a watching brief on the requirements of Martin's Law. So this came out of the Manchester Arena bombings, and it's about putting in place those counter-terrorism measures to make sure something like that doesn't happen again. We can never say never, but we are aware of that and doing what we can to make sure that any events where there's a large number of people attending, we have the appropriate measures in place.
Sorry, Councillor Whiting.
Thanks, Chair. So on risk 12, Mike, obviously we saw in the city quite recently these kind of emergencies can arise from nowhere, and obviously climate change is, just going to get worse as time goes by. It says here no provision could be given by the county council. So where are we in terms of finding alternative provision, and how confident are you that our current emergency plans are good enough as they stand without that alternative provision in place?
I think, Chair, this relates to the early point on recruitment. So, individual district councils can't afford to pay a full-time emergency planning officer, so we've always tried to tag it onto another job such as health and safety. County Council came up with a brilliant idea that will provide it a paid service, that we'll offer to all district councils. It's worked well, but I think the county have recruited numerous officers, but they haven't quite recruited enough yet. So what they've said to us is at this point in time, we cannot offer that service to us. So we want to keep pushing and keep that working together to make sure, it works centrally, because it works better that way. But in the meantime, I go back to my first point, which is the health and safety officer is currently picking this up as well. So it's not ideal. She has an assistant at the moment as well, which is helping her out with all health and safety issues. But in the long term, I'd like to take the approach, more strategic angle with the county if it's offered. But in the interim, we're doing what we can.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, Mike, I think we're all fully aware that incidents occur. I understand there was a stabbing today in a school in Tewkesbury. I'm not aware that we have any lockdown procedures within the building, do we? Because an angry resident, I'm sure, would possibly find that full council is a good time to attack the front office staff in a very vulnerable position. I just wonder if we have anything in place, or whether that's something we should begin to think about.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly with DWP in the building, they do provide a security guard. We don't pay for that security guard, but they have willingly offered that if there are any issues, then they will step in and help us deal with it. But you're absolutely right. It'll be down to people like myself to come down to the main desk and try and diffuse the situation. But if it's something really, really serious, then, fortunately that hasn't happened. And it's part of the risk assessments that we're looking forward to try and resolve.
To be fair, you are nearest the open door as well.
Sorry, I was just thinking, can we lock this door? Can we barricade ourselves in if necessary? And if not, perhaps that's something that ought to be considered. Not for this meeting, but
Chair, it has been raised at a national level because, these are open meetings, so we can't stop anyone coming into the meeting. It's been raised at the higher echelons. So during COVID, we did have virtual meetings, which worked for the COVID situation. Unfortunately, that law changed where we had to go back to face-to-face meetings. I'll say it's on our list and it's on the LRF, Local Resilience Forum as well. But at the moment, it's a case of looking after ourselves at this point in time.
No further questions on that one?
So that brings me on to the final one, risk 13, which is the long-term view. This is about socio-economic trends. If we have an ageing population and our average age changes from 40 to 60, then the council needs to react in terms of what services it provides and how it provides them. So the Gedling plan looks forward for the 4-year period, which gives a strategic direction of where we're going. I suppose the bigger side is we're working with the new mayoral authority if it comes into fruition next May, and that will be looking at the long-term strategic direction, not only of Gedling and all the other boroughs and districts, but also the county of Nottinghamshire and the county of Derbyshire as well.
Okay, so are there any other questions on the paper? I just wanted to ask, and I appreciate this might be more for the audit committee anyway, but in terms of the risk register, and I appreciate you cannot ever get all risks to green, and if you did, then you're not doing your risk register properly. But do you have targets that you're trying to get the risk to? Yes. So that goes to audit committee, does it? In terms of member oversight or something?
Again, Chair, that's probably something we could add into this report. So we do in the background, we have what's called a raw risk, which is with no controls in place, this is the worst impact that could happen. Then we have a current risk, which is, with the various mitigations we've got in place, this is where we think we are. And then you have a target risk, which is the lowest point that you're ambitious to get to. So that's all appears in the background, yes. So probably something we need to think about when we refresh the risk approach.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, then thank you very much. Are you staying for the next item as well? Okay. Yes. So we're just going to move on to agenda item 5, and we're just noting the progress against quarter 4 of the Gedling plan.
Thank you, Chair. So, again, this is a quarterly report. It comes to Cabinet, followed by overview and scrutiny. What we do, we report on the performance data for each quarter, and this report tonight sets out the performance data for the Council at the end of quarter 4, and also the year-end performance as at 31st of March 2023. So starting with actions, there are 90 actions, including the Gedling plan for delivery during last year. And at the year end, all were either completed or incorporated into the new Gedling plan 2023 to 2027, moving forward for delivery. And there were about 10 actions that rolled forward. And that was simply because not all actions, can be delivered straight away. A lot of them have longevity longer than 12 months, which was why they're all there. So I think it's good news that we've either delivered them and achieved them or rolling forward, and we're still taking action on those. In terms of quarter 4 performance indicators, there were 32, of which 19 were either on or above target, 4 were slightly below target, and 3 did miss the target. And I'll come on to those in a minute. The other 6 indicators were for data tracking purposes only. In terms of year end, we have a further 12 indicators that are only monitored on a 12-month basis. And again, 6 were either on or above target, with the other 6 indicators being for data tracking purposes only. The table in paragraph 2.4 shows examples of particularly positive performance, and there's just 4 areas where I just want to draw your attention. So the first one is net additional homes provided. where in the last year we've achieved a figure of 650 net additional homes against a target of 497. That's really pleasing because in the past, due to the state of the economy, we've missed target, so that has turned around as part of the local plan. And there's evidence out there that there was, apart from one recently, a lot of building going on in the borough. So linked to this is the number of affordable homes delivered, where we have achieved a figure of 124 against a target of 20. We also have a number of long-term empty homes returned to use, and we define this as over 6 months vacant. And again, we have achieved a figure for the year of 126 against a target of 40. So a really good result again on that. And quite regularly, as it's pleasing to see that the percentage of planning applications processed, and this is for major, minor and other categories, have all exceeded their respective targets. I say this is significant because there is a shortage of planning officers out there amongst other officers, and the team have done exceptionally well to continue to meet the targets in the previous year. So the reasons for the 3 indicators that missed the target are set out in paragraph 2.5. The first one is processing housing benefit change in circumstances, where we had an achievement of 7.4 days against an annual target of 5 days. We did see a lot of processing come forward throughout last year and a number of spikes in the caseload, which did affect our ability to manage those. And but the most important things around housing benefit claims is the new ones. So these are people who come to the council and they need the money, need the resources, so we do set them as a priority and concentrate on delivering those. So you can see in that previous table, we have met our target in terms of new ones, but as a consequence, a small consequence, that the change of circumstances had a slight backlog and we only managed to deliver those in 7.4 days. The second one is around percentage of household waste, and this is the waste sent for reuse, recycling and composting, where we've achieved a 33.9% against an annual target of 36, so slightly down. And linked to that is the other way around. So by not recycling as much, your residual waste goes up, and the outcome was residual household waste per household was 603 kilograms against a target of 560. And again, this is due to what we can and cannot recycle. It is a very complicated process with the current contracts that are in place. We're not the Waste Disposal Authority, so we have to abide by the rules set by the County Council and Veolia as part of that contract. It is difficult to understand, as I say, what can go in the bin and what can't, particularly around types of plastic, and that does lead to more waste going ultimately into the residual bin. We've also had a few problems with contamination of recycling bins, where people still think nappies can be recycled, which amazes me, but contamination does occur from nappies. Food, like pizza boxes, shouldn't go in the recycling bin because the food has grease and everything else left in it, and also textiles and glass. So with all that going on, the target are quite stretched targets, and it's difficult to see at the moment how we'll improve significantly to meet those targets without a change at a county-wide and probably a national level as well, what can and cannot be recycled. I think that's a question.
Yeah, do you want the questions to wait to the end, or do you want to take them now?
I'll take that one now.
Okay, so I've got a question from Councillor Hughes first.
Thank you. Just coming on to back to the Veolia situation and the rest. I mean, I find it incredibly difficult to figure out which plastics are recyclable and which aren't, and I'm better clued up than your average resident, even if I do say so myself. I'm aware that the contract the county has with Veolia is coming up for renewal, but I can't remember when. It's in the next few years, I think. I wonder if you, knew the when it was coming up for renewal or renegotiation, and whether or not the waste collection authorities, Gedling and the other districts, have some input into that process.
Well, Chair, it's probably not for me to comment on county council matters, but my understanding is it's a long time yet. In my mind, I think it's 20 odd years before it's So yeah, I wouldn't want to comment on county council business, but we are dictated by the disposal authority. We're just a collection authority.
Councillor Whiting?
Just to follow on from what Councillor Hughes was just saying, we have a issue in my household where we have family visitors, I won't out them in case they're watching on YouTube, who put things that can be recycled where they live into our bin. So given that the county council are tied into this complicated contract perhaps for the next couple of decades, is there anything more we can do to inform residents what can and can't be recycled and where they might be able to take things that can't go in the bin? For example, our local co-op, you can take in your soft plastics that can't go in. So is there anything more we can do as the collecting authority on that side?
Chair, we do work really, really well with Veolia and the County Council of how and what we can recycle. We constantly put it in the Contacts magazine every, 3 times a year of, a diagram of what can and cannot be recycled. It's on the website, but, it is complicated and we do try our best. To be fair to the government, I think when the Environment Act rolls out, standardisation is one of the key aims of that, and that will certainly help. But I think we're a long way off that yet. So there's always more we can do in terms of promotion. But if you've got any great ideas, just pass them through, because we're always willing to listen. And we do have a county-wide group around recycling and things, and they discuss initiatives as well. But, I don't think we'll ever get to the state where we're entirely recycling everything and entirely no contamination, but it's an aim, and all councils are trying to do more.
Got Councillor Welsh.
I was just going to really quickly say that under our series review recommendations that went to Cabinet last week, one of the things was that we promote what can be disposed of down toilets, and recycling was sort of part of that. So as part of this committee, one of our recommendations was to sort of promote that as well. So as a committee, we're promoting that. So obviously, depending on what Cabinet say in their formal review, but we as a committee will be sort of sharing those ideas, maybe not exactly to the specifications that you would want, but we'll be giving some further promotion to recycling and what can be flush and that sort of stuff. So thank you.
Sorry, thanks, Emma. Councillor Welsh.
Yes, this is with regards to housing. I believe that one of the biggest challenges this council has got is in relation to housing. On this here performance indicator, we talk about the average length of time spent in temporary accommodation in weeks, which is 19.1 weeks. What is the current waiting list with regards to our housing? What does our housing list look like at the moment? And we've talked about the amount of time, but how many people are in temporary accommodation, and what is that temporary accommodation? What are we using at the moment?
Thank you, Chair. Bed and breakfast, housing, temporary accommodation is a huge issue for all councils across the country. And there are a number of performance indicators, and none of them really are fit for purpose. So the best one we're using at the moment, in my mind, is number of nights spent in temporary accommodation per family. Again, even that doesn't work particularly well, because a family could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 1. So there's all those indicators that we need to work with. There is clearly a shortage across the country for that, and that is why there are huge bed and breakfast costs, nationally. The government's recognised this. They've given a lot of money towards bed and breakfast as a contribution to all councils. And it's just seeing exactly where we go with that. We're not a stock holding authority, as you know, so it's very difficult for us. We do have to work with partners to try and encourage affordable housing to be built. And then there's different definitions of affordable housing, whether it's sociable housing or affordable. There's then changes around, what the DWP and the rent cap will be. And in most cases, the rent cap doesn't cover, the grant now doesn't cover the actual rent with rents going up. Then there's another issue where social landlords are normal commercial landlords are struggling to, not struggling to rent them, but they're finding it so difficult that there's a process now where a lot of them are coming out the market and probably selling the house as well. So the number of rentable properties out there is dwindling. So it is a big national issue, and it's something we do watch regularly on a monthly basis. We monitor it, but I don't think there is an easy solution to this at the moment. And you know, the numbers do reflect that. 19 days, or I can't remember what. 19 weeks. Again, if we've got a huge family, we don't have many 5-6 bedroom houses in the borough, and if they do, they're certainly not in you know, in the public sector that can be rented through social landlords. So a lot of our problems are the big families, and I say big families, probably 5 or more, are a real issue to try and get them housed. Where there are, you know, probably smaller families are a bit easier, but you know, as a council, we've already bought 7 new properties for temporary accommodation purposes. We've got money approved through the council budget in March to purchase another 8 temporary accommodation properties. But again, most of these wouldn't accommodate the big families out there. So it is a real problem that, you know, we're all grappling with as local authorities.
So, Councillor Welsh, I know you asked some specifics, and I appreciate you probably didn't have the specifics on you. Do you want to get those answered after the meeting?
I'd like to know more about how many people are on the waiting list and how they fit into the different criterias. So how many are in criteria 1, how many in criteria 2, how many have been told that, you know, it'll be 5 or 6 years before?
Is that okay to take
Yeah,
away?
we can get that and circulate it to this meeting. Yeah.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to start off with a bit of a moan, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I have to say I feel this report is really poorly written. Paragraph 1.4 sends you to a link on the website, which then gives you the detail from 22-23 when we're assessing different data on quarter 4 here. And normally the detail on that link is put in the report page by page, so we can see all the indicators in more detail. You go on page 27 to say that there were 4 slightly below target, but there's no detail of those in the report. It just feels like a tap on the back of how good we've been, which is fine. I'm here for that. But our job is to scrutinise where maybe you're not doing so well and put forward ideas. I think councillors have done that today. So I just want that recording, that it's quite disappointing that it comes across a bit like a tap on the back, follow this link. Not many people, particularly the public, will follow that link, because councillors may do, but the public won't, and normally that's in the report. Moving on, if I may, to temporary accommodation, I'm pleased Councillor Welsh is here, because I bang on about that every year. You say in the report on page 34 that we're buying 7 properties on the open market. Can we have detail on what those properties are, how many bedrooms, and what impact that will have on the waiting list, as Councillor Welsh has alluded to? Because from the previous years that I've read this report, I understand that it's big housing, 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom houses that we don't have, hence why people spend a long time in B&B accommodations. And I'd hate for this council to be spending lots of money. I think from the government you've had over 400 grand this year to tackle the waiting list, and I would hate for us to be investing that in 2 to 3 bedroom houses where the need might be 4 to 5, or vice versa. I don't know, but we need to see the detail on that, please.
Thanks. And on the back of a point that Councillor Smith raised, I was going to raise at the end that I understand it's helpful to see the areas that have missed the target and the reasons for that, but it would also be helpful to know when you think the target might be met, or if the targets had to be revised. Thanks.
Yes, certainly, Chair, we can call those up. But just to answer your first point, this report has always done that. It's never reported the near misses. So, but we can look at developing that in the future.
Is that we're buying? Can we have the details?
I can get you details of that, yeah. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, yeah.
That's right. Just whilst we're picking over details, just with that one on average time spent in temporary accommodation, I can understand why you set a target that's average, but could we also know how long the longest waits are as well? and what the reason is, because it goes back to the point Councillor Welsh was making about, and also Councillor Smith, about the sort of accommodation being available and where the blockages are.
I'm just wondering if this might be a topic we want to look at in more detail as a group. Yeah. So perhaps you can liaise with Emma about who the best person is to come and give us a report, and if members have got any other questions they'd want to be looked at within that report, then we can ask for those to be answered as well. Thank you.
Okay. Certainly can. Thank you, Chair. Just carrying on then, paragraph 2.6 provides a summary of the position regarding compliments, complaints and MPs letters. I think it's just pleasing to note there that the number of complaints did actually fall by 22% last year, which is good, considering the challenges we have faced in last year. In terms of achievements over the last quarter, these are set out in detail in the appendix, several pages there, but just some are separately highlighted in paragraph 2.7 and talk about the newly established Social Mobility Commission that started in the end of March. I've talked about it a lot, but the new Gedling plan is quite key for me. It sets the direction of the leadership and the council, and it takes us forward over the next 4 years. Really pleased to see the opening of the new Holocaust Memorial Garden at the Country Park. We continue to deliver the free bulky waste collections in January and February. They're very successful there. And again, addressing litter, the big spring clean week held in March, which was really successful, and that's down to the huge number of voluntary groups out there, that people who are willing to roll their sleeves up and pick up litter, and the council supports them in doing that. But there's a huge number of volunteers out there for which we're eternally grateful for that. And, you know, not to end, to end on a good success, which is the Learn to Swim school. Significant numbers of children are using that now, and it's really pleasing to see that. So as always, Chair, I'd like to place on record my thanks to all staff for continuing to deliver these high quality services for the council over the last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And obviously this committee also thanks the staff for their work in delivering against the plan. I just had a point around the complaints. So my worry when we see low complaints or complaint numbers going down is to be sure that it's easy for people to make complaints, that the complaint process is accessible and easy for people.
I haven't put one in personally, Chair, so I haven't tested the system, but I believe it is easy to use, and I'll have to try it with Emma away from this meeting.
Do we monitor that complaints come from all groups, and in terms of equality and diversity, and that it's available in different formats, etc.?
Yes, Chair, all complaints are analysed between department, where they've come from, what type they are, whether it's service failure, whether it's being dealt with inappropriately by staff, whether it's a legislation change, and we also monitor any that, specifically monitor any that are equality related as well, and they're reported through to the internal equalities group, and indeed the member equality group as well.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis?
Yes. I'd like to say that the free bulky waste collection is very welcome, and I hope we manage to continue to do that. However, I did note over the new year there was some confusion for residents picking up on social media, essentially, that they weren't aware that there was going to be a free bulky waste collection. Now, I'm sure it was publicised, but if I can just feed that in, that perhaps we need to look at other avenues to make sure people know about it, and know about it before the Christmas, the season. People may well have things that they want to get rid of. They've bought a new sofa, they want to get rid of the old sofa and so on. If they know it's coming up, we may get less fly tipping. Thank you.
assuming the fly tipping comes from our residents in our area. Yeah, Councillor Whiting.
Just on recording of complaints, is there any way we could look at, or is this already being done, or if not, is there a way we can look at recording complaints that we receive as ward councillors? So, you know, Joe Bloggs says my bins haven't been collected to us rather than to the council. We sort it out ourselves. They might have, if we weren't here, they might have otherwise made a complaint to the council. I know it's possibly difficult, but that might be one of the reasons perhaps why complaints have gone down. So is that something that could be looked at?
Certainly something through you, Chair, that we could look at. Yeah, I mean, what we have is the councillor, I was going to say the councillor inquiry system. So if you did have a complaint, just put it on councillor inquiries and then we could pick it up that way.
So, yeah, so for example, last week I had 2 people contact me to say their bins haven't been collected, but if I just pass that on to councillor inquiries, then the question becomes, is that recorded as a complaint? It is. Okay.
Sorry, yes, they're all allocated a separate number and recorded.
Okay, are there any other questions? So we're just noting this report anyway. So thank you very much. I believe you can escape now.
I love it so much. Thank you.
So then we move on to agenda item 5, which is looking at our work programme, and I believe Emma's going to lead this item.
Hello. It was just to sort of get your feedback, as we do every year and at every meeting. This work plan has been amalgamated from a few different avenues. 1, some follow-on items from the previous committee. 2, from our training that I think most of you attended a few weeks ago. And 3, from conversations with the chair and the vice chair. So I formulated from our discussions what I think to be a good plan. It is extremely full in some places. So I wanted to get feedback on whether the timelines were okay, if you had any priorities, anything you want to switch around. From our conversations today, I've sort of highlighted a few things that aren't on the plan that you seem quite keen about. So a quality action plan review or a temporary accommodation review. Also, just to get feedback on any groups or partners that we want to invite in. We've had all 3 of our partners that we fund come in last year. It's whether you want an update from them, as we only have 1 currently on the plan, and that is a mixture of the Notts County Council emergency planning team and our health and safety officer and our monitoring officer. They'll be coming to our next meeting to sort of give you an update on our emergency plan and our procedures. But yeah, it's sort of over to you really to give me your comments, feedback. Do you want me to move anything up? Does the committee as a whole have any preferences, or are these timelines okay for now, and then we can review as time goes on? So I'll open it up to you guys.
Okay, so before I open it up to other comments, I just wanted to advise everyone that Emma did try and get one of the portfolio holders to come today, but I think it was difficult with it being the first meeting. And so one of the things I wondered was whether when we get towards the end of the year, we actually suggest somebody to go in for the first meeting of the next cycle so that they're not in the same position as we are, because obviously with the number of portfolio holders and the number of meetings, it's going to be difficult to scrutinise everyone in a reasonable timeline otherwise, would be my opinion. Councillor Welsh.
Just to be clear about what I was saying with regards to scrutiny, it wasn't just a temporary accommodation, it is housing in Gedling in general, waiting lists, what the criteria is for on that waiting list and how that is looked at, when it was last looked at, a use of temporary accommodation, and what we're doing, what we can as a borough. I completely agree with what you've said, Mike, that this is a huge national issue. But I don't think we do ourselves any disservice by recognising that national issue here in Gedling and speaking up about it in a platform such as this and knowing what the reality is with regards to housing and what people are facing here in Gedling as well, through no fault of the council on many occasions.
So I've got Councillor Hughes. And then...
Sorry. Thank you. If it's not too late to add to an already burgeoned workload, Councillor Duncan wondered if Scrutiny could possibly look at two items, the failure of to secure the various levelling up bids in the last year or so, whether the reasons for that could be scrutinised, and the councillor inquiries email system, which has been mentioned. There have been a few issues where it doesn't seem to have got through to the relevant department, so if one or two of those, that could also be looked at. And one final question, is there a report coming to either Cabinet, Council or this committee regarding the impact of voter ID?
I can answer the voter ID one. So I will be giving an update to SLT on the 25th of July about the next steps of the Elections Act. That will also include an update on the impact in Gedling and across the country of voter ID. My plan was then to bring it to the next council after that, so maybe September or the following council. What I did last time was give a briefing to the council before the committee, so we could be a bit more informal. But if the council as a whole wants that to be an actual report that goes to council, that's fine by me. It will be similar, just the first 2 points. The failure of level up and funding, that was something that was discussed at the last meeting, I think, and I think it might be on there in some facility. I'm just trying to think where it is. Sorry, I'm just looking at it now. I think maybe we were thinking about it being added to the project section of the review of the Gedling plan, performance and priorities, and funding. I think that was part of that. And on councillors' inquiries, that's absolutely fine. We can just do a quick update report on sort of where the comments go, our general timelines on that. That's absolutely fine. We can bring an update. I would caveat, though, that, as I said at the start of my introduction, we need to sort of prioritise this and maybe take a few things off that the committee feels are less important, because this is quite a lot of things for you to hear at the committee. We've, the members that were here last year knows that if there's a presentation, a portfolio holder update, we'll be here for hours and hours and hours. So I think maybe if you aren't sure today, I think maybe if everyone could just have a think of things that they would like to remove and priorities for the committee, because there's only so many things that we could either have as a report, and then those that go on to be a working group, there's only so many that we can sort of facilitate throughout the year. So we are led by you, so we'll do whatever you like, but we need to be realistic about offers of time and working group time of you as well. So happy to take suggestions, but I think we need to prioritise and think about what we want to go to which committee, what we actually want really in-depth detail on via a working group, and what we just want an update report on. Yeah, thank you.
So next I had Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. One of the issues that I'm particularly concerned about at the moment, and it's with regard to partner agencies rather than the borough itself, is the provision of dentistry services within the borough. And in particular, I've learnt that the number of children in Gedling Borough who actually have a dentist is extraordinarily low. So I would very much welcome the opportunity of being able to talk to colleagues in the NHS, and whether that be at a scrutiny meeting or a working party, I'm comfortable with either. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Just on that, I mean, the County Council have a health scrutiny committee where they can get involved in that, so I don't think it's a Gedling matter. But anyway, on levelling up bids, I haven't exchanged notes with the Liberals, I promise, but I do think we need to review the funding bid process, and I think that needs to be a working party rather than a report, as that's not sufficient. And, reviewing the feedback from levelling up 2 and how the council is getting on with implementing that before round 3 opens. Obviously time sensitive because round 3 is October or November time, I think. So I think we need to get on with that pretty quickly, and scrutinise how the council is implementing the feedback to make sure that level bid 3 has more chance of being successful. Thank you.
So nobody's suggesting things to come off, are they? But so I know I talked to you about the youth council, and I wasn't seeing that so much as us having a paper. What that was about was that my understanding was that they're in a position where they mainly get people come and make presentations to them, so they're receivers of information, and that it might be of interest perhaps to some of their members to come and observe one of these meetings so that they might think about how they might scrutinise a bit more themselves. So maybe that can be managed just by offering them to come as observers. I don't know what people think.
That was placed as a partner review, so that was for them to come here to talk to us about what they're doing, to feedback any concerns they have, and then again take away any information that they want. I'm happy to remove that if you want, and then just invite them as an observer. My thinking was more about reviews and reports that I wanted, mainly reviews, because those are the things that take the time. The presentations take the time. The portfolio holders come in as a standard item and needs to happen, so that's always going to be on every single agenda. So it's about the columns I'm thinking more to review are the reports / items at committee and current reviews. Those are the sort of things that are not just going to be a quick 10-minute discussion. They're going to be in-depth pieces of work where if we do a review, it's going to be 3 to 6 meetings that you guys have to come to. So it's a lot of your extra time when you're already really, really busy. So that was the key thing for me personally.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Emma, on the section 2, you put 3 bullet points down, and I assume these were subcommittees that you were planning to formulate. Certainly things we've talked about before about public parks. You know, just I don't want to be too political about this, but you know, should we be spending all the money at Gedling Country Park and neglecting Burnston Park, for instance? That's a discussion. Where do we stand in terms of prioritising public recreation grounds for refurbishment? And I know there's a list. Are we spending? Are we neglecting our facilities because we've had new facilities provided through S106 money, etc. And I think that it's not a report, I think it was a working group, certainly for those of us who've got parks within our wards, not just members of this committee, but the whole of the council. So is that what your plan is?
Yeah, so the review of public parks is on the programme to have a report come to the committee in November and then form a working group. The other 2 items, one was friendship groups and about our liaison with them. That was sort of the my plan for the partner reviews. Who do we want to review, become friends with? Who else do we want to sort of invite and scrutinise and help and get information from? That was part of that. What was the last one again? Sorry, 1 second. The last one was partner performance. Oh, yeah, so those 2 are sort of the same thing. So partner performance, friendship groups sort of rolled into one. The public parks and facilities is already on the work plan for November. So those are the rolling issues that I was discussing. So that will be coming soon.
No other comments or thoughts? No? Russell?
Given that, I think when the chair, Emma, and myself sat down and did this, we envisioned that levelling up funding would be included in the funding opportunity. So given what Councillor Smith has said about the time urgency of that before round 3 opens or is scheduled to open, perhaps that could be brought forward to the September meeting.
Sure, I'll get that sorted and I'll get a report from Tanya, and then I'll get her to come here and then we can do a working group from that. Thank you.
Okay, then I guess it will be my responsibility as the chair to time manage the meetings to ensure that we have enough time for all these items and to give them sufficient scrutiny.
Also, like we did last year, if we find that we're not getting through them all, the reports aren't realistic in the time frame, that the amount of presentations we're having is just going to be too much for you to take in, then we can add another meeting as necessary. The Constitution allows up a minimum of 5. We currently have 6, but we can have more if we need to. Again, it's just your time if you have time to have that meeting. So we can sort of, I'll have another review of it, add those items in, speak to officers, get feasibility and timelines, and then I'll come back to you in the next meeting with an updated version. I'll include the funding in the next committee with a report with a view to looking at a working group to discuss this, and then we'll go from there. Thanks.
Okay, so are there any other comments on this item? No. Is there any other business? None's been notified to me. Okay, so the meeting is now closed. Thank you very much.